The late afternoon sun cast its warm golden light across the small town playground, painting everything in gentle amber hues. Leaves, crisp and rust-colored, fluttered down from towering maple trees, whispering softly as they drifted to the ground. It was the kind of day where the air smelled faintly of pine and fireplace smoke, where shadows stretched long and soft across the earth, and the world seemed to quiet itself in preparation for evening. Children's laughter filled the playground, bright, playful, and carefree. Yet in the midst of all that joy, one quiet, unnoticed moment was about to change everything. Little Emma sat at the far edge of the sandbox, her light brown hair tied into loose pigtails, her cheeks faintly flushed from the cool breeze. In her small hands she held her most treasured possession, a little wooden horse. It wasn't perfect. One of its ears was slightly uneven, and its legs bore tiny nicks from where she'd accidentally dropped it on the kitchen floor. But to Emma, it was beautiful. Her grandfather had carved it for her by hand, smoothing each curve with patience and love. He'd given it to her the night of her 5th birthday, with a smile that crinkled the corners of his tired eyes. "Take care of this little horse," he had said softly, "and it will always remind you of home." Emma did. She carried it everywhere. She was tracing lines in the sand with the horse's tiny legs, making little trails like footsteps when she heard it, a sound so soft she almost thought she imagined it. A quiet, choked sob carried gently on the wind. Emma paused, looked up, and scanned the playground. Near the swings, partially hidden behind the old oak tree, sat a girl around her age. She wore a faded blue dress and a pair of worn brown boots. Her long black hair fell over her face like a curtain, and her small shoulders trembled as she cried silently. Emma blinked curiously. She had never seen this girl before. She wasn't from her kindergarten class, and she didn't live in their neighborhood. There was something about the way the girl sat, alone, almost invisible, as though she didn't want to be noticed, yet her sadness made her impossible to ignore. Other children ran past her, chasing each other, climbing the slide, laughing, unaware of her presence. But Emma noticed, and something inside her chest, something gentle and brave, tugged softly. Clutching her wooden horse, Emma pushed herself up and brushed the sand off her knees. Her boots crunched softly against the gravel as she walked toward the girl. With each step she felt her heart thump a little harder, not from fear exactly, but from the uncertainty of what she would say or do when she reached her. She was only 5, too young to understand complicated words like empathy or compassion, but old enough to feel them. When she reached the girl, Emma stopped a few steps away. The girl didn't look up. She hugged her knees to her chest, her face hidden, tears slipping down her cheeks and soaking into the fabric of her dress. For a long moment, Emma said nothing. She wasn't sure if the girl wanted to be alone, but she couldn't bring herself to walk away either. "Hi," Emma whispered softly. The girl's shoulders stiffened and she slowly looked up. Her eyes were dark and full of pain, glistening with tears that hadn't yet fallen. She didn't say anything. Her lips trembled and she quickly wiped her face with the back of her hand as though ashamed to be seen crying. Emma offered a small, shy smile. "My name is Emma." Still, the girl said nothing. She just looked at Emma, her breathing uneven, her delicate fingers twisting nervously in her lap. Emma hesitated, then glanced down at the wooden horse in her hands. Her grandfather's words echoed faintly in her memory. She looked back up at the girl. Without another thought, without hesitating further, she held out the toy. "Here," she said simply. The girl stared at the little horse, confused. Her brows furrowed slightly and she shook her head slowly, wiping fresh tears. "No, I can't," she whispered, though her voice was barely audible. "You can," Emma insisted, her voice soft, but determined. She stepped forward carefully and placed the wooden horse gently into the girl's lap. The girl looked at it as though it were something fragile, something too precious to touch. Her fingers hovered above it, afraid, unsure. "Why?" the girl finally asked, voice trembling. Emma shrugged a little, her small shoulders lifting in the simplest gesture of sincerity. Because you're sad, she said truthfully, and this always makes me feel better. The girl blinked, tears still clinging to her lashes. Slowly, she touched the horse, lifting it carefully with both hands as though she was holding a piece of someone's heart. She pressed it against her chest, no longer crying as hard, though her breath still hitched now and then. For a time, neither girl spoke. They sat quietly by the swings, the sun dipping lower, casting long shadows across the grass. The breeze tugged gently at their hair. Nearby, laughter still echoed, but it seemed distant now, softer, like the world was giving them a small space of silence. "My name is Ayana," the girl said eventually, almost in a whisper, as though her voice hadn't been used in days. Emma smiled wider. "Ayana," she repeated, liking the way the name sounded, like wind rustling through leaves. Ayana looked at the toy horse again, then at Emma. "It's beautiful." "My grandpa made it," Emma said proudly. "His hands are all wrinkled, but he can carve anything." Ayana nodded slowly, still holding the horse close. She didn't smile fully, not yet, but the sadness in her eyes softened like a storm beginning to calm. Emma sat down beside her on the swing. The chains creaked softly as she settled in, kicking her feet lightly. "Do you want to play?" she asked after a moment. Ayana hesitated, looking down at her boots, at the tiny cracks in the leather. She opened her mouth to say something but closed it again. "It's okay," Emma said quickly, not wanting to make her uncomfortable. "We don't have to play. We can just sit." So they did. They sat in silence, side by side, the swing swaying gently beneath them. Ayana held the wooden horse in her lap, tracing its smooth edges with her fingertips. Emma leaned back, looking up at the sky, where a few wispy clouds drifted lazily across the fading blue. After a while, Emma spoke again. "Why were you crying?" Ayana's shoulders tensed. She looked down, her fingers tightening around the horse. For a long moment, Emma thought she wouldn't answer. But then, in a voice barely louder than a breath, Ayana said, "I miss my home." Emma turned to her. "Where is your home?" Ayana glanced toward the distant trees at the edge of the playground where the forest began. "Far away. My family doesn't live here. We came just for a little while. Will you stay?" Emma asked. Ayana shook her head, her hair falling forward like a curtain. "I don't know." Emma didn't know what to say. She was too young to understand what it meant to leave home, to uproot everything familiar. But she could understand missing someone. She could understand loneliness. So she reached out and gently touched Ayana's hand. "You can stay with me," Emma said, her voice full of innocent certainty. "We can be friends." Ayana looked at Emma, her dark eyes wide. For the first time, her lips curved into a small, shaky smile. "Friends?" Emma nodded eagerly. "Yes." Ayana looked down at the wooden horse again, then back at Emma, as if searching her face for any sign of insincerity. Finding none, she whispered, "Okay." The sun slipped lower, painting the sky shades of pink and orange. The chill in the air deepened, but neither girl felt cold. They sat together until the sky began turning purple, until Emma's mother called her name from across the playground. "Emma," her mother called again, waving from the path. Emma stood from the swing and brushed off her dress. "I have to go," she said softly. Ayana nodded, her fingers wrapping protectively around the toy horse. "Thank you," she whispered again. Emma smiled, her eyes warm. "I'll see you tomorrow?" Ayana hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Maybe." Emma grinned and ran toward her mother, turning back only once to wave. Ayana lifted her hand and waved back, small and timid but real. Then she looked down at the little wooden horse resting in her lap. She held it close, whispering something no one else could hear. As Emma walked home, holding her mother's hand, she glanced back at the playground. Ayana still sat on the swing, but she was no longer crying. She sat quietly, watching the sky, the little wooden horse safe in her arms. Emma didn't know it then, how could she? She was only 5. But that small act of kindness, that one simple gift from her heart, would reach further than she could ever imagine. It would travel across families, across traditions, across years. It would begin something that could not be undone. And somewhere, beyond the trees, beyond the whispers of the wind, someone had seen. Someone who would not forget. The next morning, the soft glow of dawn filtered through the curtains of Emma's small bedroom, painting the walls in delicate shades of pink and gold. Emma stirred in her bed, blinking sleepily, her little hands clutching the blanket like it was a warm, protective hug. The memories of the previous day, of the playground, of Ayana, of the little wooden horse danced through her mind like sunbeams flickering through leaves. She had never met anyone quite like Ayana, quiet and distant but somehow radiating a strength that Emma could feel without fully understanding. The thought of seeing her again brought a flutter of excitement, and for a moment Emma forgot about breakfast, about the chores her mother would ask her to do, about everything except the possibility that she might find her new friend waiting somewhere. Her mother's voice broke through the soft morning calm, calling from the kitchen downstairs. "Emma, breakfast is ready." The warmth in her voice wrapped around Emma, pulling her from her daydreams. She quickly jumped out of bed, tugged her favorite sweater over her small shoulders, and ran down the stairs 2 steps at a time, her bare feet thudding softly against the wooden steps. The smell of pancakes and maple syrup greeted her at the bottom, making her stomach rumble with hunger. Her mother smiled at her, brushing a stray strand of hair from her face, and served her a plate of golden pancakes dripping with syrup. "Did you sleep well, sweetie?" her mother asked, setting down a glass of milk. Emma nodded vigorously, cheeks flushed. "Yes, Mommy. I think today will be a very good day." Her mother chuckled softly, a sound full of warmth and morning comfort, and ruffled Emma's hair. But Emma's mind was elsewhere. She was thinking about Ayana and the wooden horse, and then she heard something that made her freeze mid-bite, a soft, tentative knock at the front door. It was unlike the usual knock from the mailman or neighbors. It was deliberate, gentle, almost ceremonial. Emma's heart skipped a beat. She set down her fork and whispered, "Mom, someone's at the door." Her mother raised an eyebrow, and together they walked to the entrance. When Emma opened the door, the sight that met her eyes made her knees feel weak with awe. Standing on the porch were 2 elders, their presence immediately commanding respect and quiet attention, though they carried no harshness in their faces. Their clothes were traditional, adorned with patterns of feathers, beads, and delicate embroidery that seemed to shimmer subtly in the morning sunlight. The colors were earthy, muted, yet striking, and every stitch told a story of skill, culture, and history. Their hair was long, one gray and the other streaked with silver, and their eyes held a quiet wisdom that made Emma feel simultaneously small and safe. Between them stood Ayana, holding the little wooden horse tightly, as if it had become a part of her very being overnight. Emma's mother, surprised but composed, opened the door wider to welcome them. "Hello, can I help you?" she asked, her voice polite but laced with curiosity. The taller of the elders, with eyes that seemed to have seen centuries pass, nodded respectfully. "We are here because of your daughter," he said, his voice deep, calm, and deliberate. "Your child showed a kindness that touched the heart of our family. We came to honor it." Emma's eyes widened. Her mother's hand instinctively went to her chest as if to steady herself. Emma, still clutching her own blanket of courage, stepped forward slightly. "Me?" she asked, barely audible, her small voice trembling with both excitement and disbelief. The elder nodded once. "Yes, little one. What you gave, what you shared, is rare. It cannot be taught, only felt." Emma's chest swelled with pride, though she didn't fully understand the weight of his words. She only knew that she had done what felt right, and somehow that was enough. Ayana, still holding the wooden horse, finally looked up at Emma. Her eyes glistened with a mixture of gratitude, shyness, and something that felt like relief. She didn't speak, but her small nod said everything. Emma ran forward and hugged her lightly, feeling the warmth of their friendship as the elders watched, smiling subtly, approvingly. The atmosphere around them seemed charged, almost sacred, with unspoken respect and quiet acknowledgement of something greater than the ordinary morning. The elders were invited inside, and as they entered the modest living room, they carried with them an air of calm authority. Their presence alone seemed to make the sunlight warmer, the shadows softer. They carefully placed a beautifully woven basket on the small oak table, a basket that seemed ordinary at first glance. But as Emma and her mother leaned in, they could see that it was extraordinary. The weave was intricate, every strand perfectly aligned, adorned with small feathers, polished stones, and subtle patterns that seemed to tell a story of generations. The basket radiated care, history, and reverence, and Emma could hardly take her eyes off it. One of the elders, the one with the silver-streaked hair, spoke gently, his voice carrying a melodic cadence. "This is a gift for your family," he said. "It is a gesture of gratitude and acknowledgement." Your daughter's heart was open when many are closed. Her small hands offered something precious without hesitation. Such acts cannot go unnoticed. Emma's mother's eyes widened and she shook her head, overwhelmed by the depth of the words. "She didn't do it for reward," she said softly, almost pleading. "She is just a child. She only wanted to help." The elder's gaze softened. "And that is why her act is pure," he said simply. "Purity of intention is a treasure that changes hearts and binds people." Emma sat cross-legged on the floor, her small fingers tracing the edges of the basket, feeling the textures of feathers and stones. She glanced at Ayana, who had placed the wooden horse beside her gently, almost ceremoniously, as if it were an offering too sacred to hold carelessly. Ayana's dark eyes met Emma's, and in that moment no words were needed. There was an understanding, a silent agreement between them that the connection they shared was something rare, something that could not be broken by distance, time, or circumstance. The elders began to carefully open the basket. Inside were small hand-carved wooden figures, each depicting animals or symbols of their culture, carved with exquisite detail and love. Next were soft, colorful blankets, woven in patterns that seemed to tell stories, landscapes of rivers, mountains, and skies embedded into the fabric. Finally, they presented a delicate necklace made of polished stones arranged in harmonious colors, smooth and cool to the touch. Emma's mother reached out, her hands trembling slightly to accept the gift. She felt the weight of it, not just the physical weight, but the symbolic weight, the depth of respect and gratitude that it carried. "Your daughter's kindness has touched more than just one heart," the elder said, his voice soft now, carrying a gentle reverence. "It has reached our family, and it has reminded us that even the smallest gesture can ripple outward and touch lives in ways no one can predict." Emma listened, her heart swelling with emotions she could not name. Pride, wonder, happiness, awe, they all mingled together, making her feel simultaneously small and vast, like she had just glimpsed a corner of something infinitely larger than herself. Ayana shifted slightly, speaking for the first time in a clear voice. "Thank you," she whispered, her words shy but steady. Emma's eyes brightened and she leaned closer. "For what?" she asked. Ayana looked down at the wooden horse, then back at Emma, and her eyes softened. "For giving me hope," she said. Emma's small hand found hers, squeezing lightly. "I didn't know it would matter that much," she admitted. "I just wanted you to feel happy." "You made me happy," Ayana said, her voice carrying the honesty of someone who had known sadness too deeply. "And you reminded me that someone cares." Emma felt a warmth in her chest that made her chest tingle. She realized that giving something away could feel even better than keeping it. It was as if a new light had been kindled inside her heart, a light that glowed softly but would not fade. The elders smiled at the exchange between the two children. "This is why we are here," one of them said, "to witness this moment and to honor it." He gestured toward the basket and the gifts. "This is not merely a token. It is a symbol of friendship, of respect, of the bond that has been created in a single day through innocence, courage, and open hearts." Emma's mother's eyes filled with tears, and she hugged Emma tightly, whispering, "I am so proud of you." Emma leaned into her mother's embrace, feeling the combined warmth of her family and the newfound connection with Ayana's family. She realized that the world, though vast and sometimes confusing, could also be profoundly beautiful when hearts were open. For the remainder of the morning, the elders shared stories, quietly, humbly weaving tales of rivers, mountains, and skies, of families that had grown close despite distance, of traditions that honored respect, kindness, and courage. Emma and her mother listened intently, absorbing every word, every gesture, every look exchanged. Ayana, too, sat quietly, her small hands folded around the wooden horse, her eyes bright and attentive. In that room, the boundaries of age, language, and culture seemed to fade, leaving only connection, understanding, and shared humanity. By the time the elders prepared to leave, the air was filled with a calm reverence, as though the morning itself had been transformed. They bowed respectfully, speaking words of thanks for the hospitality and care shown. Emma waved, her heart full, knowing that this day, this moment would remain with her forever. Ayana squeezed the wooden horse one last time, and together they watched as the elders stepped outside, the sunlight glinting off their clothing. their presence leaving a lingering sense of peace and gratitude. As the door closed gently behind them, Emma turned to Ayanna, her eyes wide. "I can't believe they came all this way," she said softly. "Just for me?" Ayanna smiled shyly. "Not just for you," she said, "for both of us. For what we shared. For what you did." Emma hugged her tightly. "I'm so glad you're my friend." And in that small living room, on that quiet morning, two worlds had begun to intertwine, stitched together by a single act of kindness, a little wooden horse, and the open hearts of two 5-year-old girls. The ripple had begun and no one could tell where it might lead. But for now, everything felt perfect, balanced, and profoundly right. Days passed after the morning when the elders had visited Emma's home, and the small house still seemed to carry a gentle hum of their presence. The wooden horse sat on Ayanna's shelf, polished from constant handling as though it had absorbed some of the warmth and care of the moment it had first been given. Emma thought about it often, imagining how the tiny figure might seem to Ayanna, how it had become a bridge between their two worlds. Even her mother, busy with her work around the house, occasionally looked at the basket the elders had left behind and smiled softly, brushing her fingers over the intricate patterns and smooth stones as if feeling the pulse of the kindness that had brought it there. There was a quiet magic in their home now, a sense of connection that lingered in the air, subtle but powerful, like sunlight through a prism. One morning, as Emma played in the backyard with a small doll she had dressed in a patchwork of scraps, she noticed movement by the edge of the driveway. Her curiosity piqued. She ran to the gate, pushing it open to see a small procession approaching. Ayanna led the way, holding her wooden horse gently in her hands, and behind her were the same elders, their eyes calm and kind, their movements deliberate and respectful. The sunlight caught the beads and feathers on their clothing, making them shimmer faintly as if the morning itself were celebrating their presence. Emma felt a thrill of excitement and a little nervousness. Something about this visit felt different, heavier with significance than the first. Her mother appeared behind her, following her carefully as they approached the visitors. The taller elder, the one with streaked silver hair, spoke first, his voice gentle but carrying weight. "We have come again, not merely to visit, but to share with you the depth of what has begun here." Emma's small hand tightened around the gate. She wanted to understand, but she also felt the thrill of anticipation, the sense that something extraordinary was unfolding, something that she could not have imagined the day before. The elders were invited into the living room once more, this time with even more care and ceremony. They moved slowly, deliberately, acknowledging the space with a reverence that seemed to make the air itself pause. Emma and Ayanna sat on the rug together, the wooden horse between them while her mother offered tea and soft bread, simple hospitality that the elders accepted with grace. One of them opened the basket they had brought, revealing its contents, hand-carved wooden figures of animals, landscapes and symbolic patterns, each a story in itself, each a piece of the culture and history that Ayanna's family carried. The blankets were softer than any Emma had touched, woven with colors and patterns that seemed to shift and dance in the morning light, telling tales of rivers, mountains, and skies as vivid as any painting. And the necklace, made of polished stones, gleamed with quiet strength, each bead seemingly alive with meaning. As Emma's mother and the elders spoke softly about the significance of each item, Ayanna shifted closer to Emma, her small hand brushing against hers. "Do you know what this means?" she asked quietly. Emma shook her head, her wide eyes reflecting the gentle sunlight streaming through the window. "It's a gift for our friendship," Ayanna said, voice barely above a whisper. "They're thanking us for being kind." Emma smiled, feeling her heart expand with a warmth that seemed to glow from inside. "I just wanted to help you," she said simply. "I didn't know it would matter this much." Ayanna squeezed her hand lightly. "It does," she said softly. "It matters more than you know." The elders shared stories in soft, measured tones, tales of the land, of people, and of the values that had guided generations. They spoke of courage, patience, and the quiet strength found in small, thoughtful actions. Emma listened intently, absorbing each word, each gesture, each pause filled with meaning. She felt a sense of awe and wonder, a recognition that the world was larger than her little backyard, that lives in traditions stretched across time and space, and yet somehow her small act of sharing had touched it. Ayanna, too, listened, holding the wooden horse in her lap like a talisman, her eyes bright and attentive, a rare smile lingering on her lips. After a while, the elders began to speak of reciprocity, of the importance of gratitude and respect. "Kindness is a river," one of them said softly. "It flows outward, touching lands and hearts that you may never see. And when it is recognized, honored, it returns to strengthen the bonds between people, families, and communities." Emma nodded, trying to understand, feeling the depth of the words even if their full meaning was beyond her years. Ayana looked at her, eyes wide. "Do you think this is why they came?" she asked. Emma squeezed her hand. "I think, yes, because of us." The elders motioned for Emma and her mother to lean closer, and carefully, with deliberate reverence, they began to place the carved wooden figures and blankets on the floor around them. Each figure told a story: a deer standing still in a field, a river flowing past mountains, a bird taking flight. Emma reached out, brushing her fingers over the smooth edges, feeling the care that had gone into every curve. "They're beautiful," she whispered. Ayana nodded, placing the wooden horse next to a carved bird figure. "Our stories can be together now," she said softly. Emma smiled, understanding in her own childlike way that friendship could be a bridge not just between two people, but between entire worlds. When the basket was fully opened, the elders presented the necklace to Emma's mother, explaining its significance. "This is not merely jewelry," one of them said. "It is a symbol of respect, of connection, of the bond your daughter's heart has created. Wear it as a reminder that even the smallest act of kindness can resonate through time." Emma's mother accepted it with hands trembling slightly, her eyes shining. She lifted Emma into her lap, holding her close. "You see, Emma," she whispered, "what you did. It matters. It truly matters." Emma hugged her mother tightly, feeling a combination of pride, awe, and a little disbelief. She had only wanted to help a friend. She had never imagined that it would ripple out so far, touching others in ways she could not yet understand. Ayana shifted closer as well, placing her hand lightly on Emma's. "Do you think our families can get to know each other?" she asked. Emma nodded eagerly. "Yes, I want them to," she said, her voice full of conviction. The elders exchanged quiet smiles, as though this outcome had been anticipated all along. "Friendship once formed seeks to grow," one of them said. "It is the beginning of understanding, of shared journeys, and of hearts opening beyond what was once thought possible." Time seemed to stretch in the room, filled with quiet conversation, soft laughter, and shared wonder. Emma's mother asked questions about the elders' traditions, about the meanings behind the carvings, the blankets, and the necklace. The elders answered patiently, weaving explanations into gentle stories that captivated both Emma and Ayana. Occasionally, they would glance at the children, noting the unspoken bond that had formed between them, a bond that transcended words, age, and experience. It was as if the air itself had grown warmer, infused with the energy of understanding, gratitude, and human connection. Eventually, the elders indicated that it was time to leave, though their departure felt ceremonial, respectful, and deliberate. They gathered the remaining items and prepared to step outside, leaving the children and Emma's mother with the gifts, the memories, and the sense of something profound and enduring. "Remember," one elder said softly, "the river of kindness flows on. Nurture it, honor it, and it will continue to grow." Ayana hugged her wooden horse, looking at Emma with wide, shining eyes. I will never forget this," she whispered. Emma hugged her back, feeling a lump of emotion rise in her throat. "Neither will I," she said simply. As the door closed behind them, Emma and Ayana sat quietly on the rug, hands still intertwined. "Do you think this will change anything?" Emma asked. Ayana nodded slowly. "Yes, everything can change. If people care," she said. They shared a long, quiet moment, absorbing the gravity of what had happened, feeling the subtle shift in their world that had begun with a simple act of sharing. The wooden horse sat between them, a symbol of connection, of courage, and of the tiny spark that had set so much into motion. Later that evening, Emma's mother tucked her into bed, brushing her hair back gently. "You made a difference today, Emma," she whispered. "More than you will ever know." Emma hugged her blanket and thought of Ayana, of the elders, of the stories, of the gifts, and of the quiet magic that had entered their lives. "I just wanted to be nice," she said softly. Her mother smiled, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "Sometimes the smallest kindness can create the biggest change," she said, and the words settled like a warm glow in Emma's heart. In the days that followed, Emma and Ayana continued to meet, their bond deepening with every shared laugh, every secret whispered under trees, every game played in sunlit fields. Their families began to visit each other, sharing meals, stories, and laughter, weaving the threads of two lives together. The gifts left by the elders were treasured, displayed prominently, each one a reminder of what had begun in the simple act of giving. And in the quiet of their hearts, Emma and Ayana knew that they had witnessed something extraordinary: the power of kindness, the strength of friendship, and the beginnings of a connection that would ripple outward in ways neither of them could fully imagine.